Hey guys, Spudknocker here, as always, and I hope all of my viewers across the world are staying safe, staying healthy, and of course staying entertained during this time of collective staying at home, quarantining, and fighting the coronavirus crisis around the world. Now today, the 31st of March 2020, we received a kind of a surprise open beta update, a little bit early, but along with that update came a very welcome new feature for the DCS JF-17 Thunder. And that of course is the addition of the air-to-air refueling probe that we can see sticking off of the fuselage just below the right-hand side of the canopy there. Now this addition to the Thunder will very much increase the flexibility of the JF-17 for both mission makers and DCS World pilots alike. I know, as being part of both of those groups, it'll definitely aid me in adding JF-17s to longer range missions to fly alongside its stablemates, the AV-8B Harrier, F-16C, as well as the F-14B Tomcat, and of course the FA-18C Hornet. Now for this video, I definitely implore you to put on some headphones when you listen to this video, so that way you can really listen to the engine sounds of the JF-17 Thunder. We're going to be talking a lot about spool up times and how that's going to affect your air-to-air refueling experience in the JF-17 Thunder. Now of course we all know that in a jet-powered aircraft, spool up times are a lot longer than in a piston-driven aircraft, in which you can move your throttle and get direct changes in power output almost immediately, whereas in a jet this usually takes a lot longer. So let's go ahead and hop on over into the cockpit and get ourselves ready for some air-to-air refueling. So we're flying over the Omani Peninsula here. We've got a Marine Corps KC-130 out there in front of us, ready to give us some juice. And we'll just set up our cockpit here. We'll go ahead and box the TACAN on the HSD, and we'll go to the TACAN menu, and of course we'll select the appropriate TACAN frequency, 12 X-ray. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to air-to-air receive mode. And we'll go ahead and stick in a course of 270. That is one of the directions for the tanker track that we're going to be intercepting. And we're going to be intercepting this tanker at a height of 18,000 feet. Now we're going to go ahead and put in preset frequency 127, which is the correct preset channel for the frequency 251.00. And we'll go ahead and give Texaco a call.
Infield 1-1. Request rejoin. Infield 1-1. Texaco 1-1. Proceed to pre-contact at 18,000 at 240.
Now the addition to the air-to-air refueling comms within DCS World in the last few open beta updates has been incredibly helpful in allowing you to know the airspeed of the tanker without having to make a guess or a guesstimate as to how fast that tanker is flying, and potentially increasing your link-up time or potentially even flying right past that tanker. So we can see the tanker out in front of us. We know that is in fact Texaco. So we'll start flying as good of an intercept as we can. I haven't had much practice in the JF-17 in quite a while here, but we're going to do the absolute best we can. This is my very first attempt at refueling the JF-17 with a KC-130 or any tanker for that matter. And we're going to go ahead and turn off our radar and put it into standby mode so that we don't fry our KC-130 crew and potentially give them all cancer with our radiation. So back to the subject of spool up time. As we all know, the JF-17 utilizes a engine called the RD-93. And the RD-93 is a variant of the RD-33 used to power the MiG-Ion MiG-29 Fulcrum. And this engine is notorious for having very long spool-up times and has been a challenge of that engine since its inception in the late 1980s. And so when it comes to air-to-air refueling here, you'll see me struggle a little bit behind the tanker when it comes to my throttle inputs, as I tend to get a little bit too slow and a little bit too fast, and that is definitely attributed to that longer spool-up time than any of the other aircraft within DCS World. So we're just very gently easing it on up to the tanker. When it comes to linking up to a tanker, slow is fast, relaxed is fast. If you try to rush this procedure, you're probably going to blow right past your tanker. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to have to do a lot of crazy maneuvering to get the aircraft back into position to link up to the tanker, and it's going to take you a lot longer than if you had just stayed relaxed, stayed nice and slow, and just flew on up to your tanker very easily.
Ready, pre-contact.
Alrighty, here we go. Ready pre-contact, and we'll just keep on easing her on up to the tanker. Now, I tried to implement my technique of inducing a slight slip with my rudders behind the tanker in order to hold position, and in the JF-17 Thunder, it really reduces your stability about the longitudinal axis of the aircraft, so I very much do not recommend it. And we're just easing it on up, nice and slow. Slow is fast, relaxed is fast. And you can really hear those long spool up times of the engine if you listen nice and close to those engine sounds. And so as a result, I'm actually falling back from the tanker a little bit there. And now I'm going to get a little bit too fast. So I'm really going to have to start damping out how much I'm moving my throttle. Just gently easing it up. And we're transitioning our eyes to the refueling pod on the wing of our tanker. And we got it.
You're taking fuel.
That was a little bit rough, so let's go ahead and take a look at the view from our GoPro camera that we mounted to our ejection seat just over our shoulder. And we're just easing it on up. And we can hear those kind of long spool up times. We're getting a little bit fast.
Break away, break away.
And that didn't look quite as violent as the view from our first person.
Fuel.
And we're just taking in some fuel. And let's see what it looks like from the tanker. That's pretty good. Didn't look nearly as violent of a hookup as it did from that first person view. I was a little bit worried there to start off. And we can see that as I hooked up there, I pulled the throttle back. I pulled it back a little bit too far, and those engines spooled down. I pushed the throttle back up. It took a lot longer for those engines to give me the power I needed, and so I started falling back quite a bit. I actually thought I was going to lose the basket here as we were air-to-air refueling, and I would have to re-link up, which is kind of always a bummer. And as I'm kind of dancing behind the tanker here, I'm changing my throttle inputs, trying to dampen out those throttle movements, really trying to make very nice tiny corrections to play to my kind of crappy RD93 engine in this jet. See, I'm starting to fall back now, and now I'm pushing the throttle too far forward. Now I'm going to have to make throttle adjustments. I'm also going to just take my feet completely off the rudders. That induced slip method behind the tanker is just no good. It really just decreases your stability in the roll axis. And there we go. It looks like we've got kind of a good position here. Gonna need to increase the throttles just a little bit. We're making sure we're looking at the wing of the tanker and just flying formation with the tanker, not trying to fly formation with the basket, because that can get you into an oscillation very, very quickly. And it's very, very easy to get into an oscillation in a very, very touchy aircraft like the JF-17 Thunder.
Complete.
And tiny little fuel tanks, transfers complete right there.
Transfer complete.
And there we go from the GoPro view. And of course, the drogue just goes right through the wing of our airplane. So one thing about air-to-air refueling in DCS world that I wish would change a little bit is when you're full, your tanks are topped off, I wish the basket wouldn't just automatically disconnect. I wish it still hung onto your probe and you had to actually reduce power and ease the probe out of the drogue rather than it just simply automatically clicking and it just falls right out on you. So that was pretty good for a first attempt. I think it was a bit rough. I would have liked to smooth out a bit of things here, but I really haven't had much formation practice in the JF-17, and she is quite the touchy little bird. You definitely need to have some curves on your controls in the JF-17, and you really need to be on top of it with your throttles. You have to be ahead of the jet so far with that kind of crappy RD-93 engine in the jet, having those such long spool up times. It's been a bane to pilots of the MiG-29 since its inception back in the late 1980s. And so that transfers over, of course, right here to the JF-17 Thunder with the RD-93, just being a RD-33 with its oil cooler and pump, as well as some electronics changed in configuration to fit within the fuselage of the JF-17. So we'll go ahead and break away from this tanker, and I hope you guys have fun with this new feature. I am certainly really enjoying it, and fly safe, as always.